Tractor Giants Part 1 takes you on a breathtaking journey to the most powerful tractors in Europe. Experience Challenger, John Deere, Case, Claas and Fendt, as well as Massey Ferguson and the Russian giants from Kirovets in the battle of the tractor titans. Tractor generations in harmonious unison. The Soviet-Russian Colossus K700A, followed by its successor model K744 and the state-of-the-art Case Magnum 310. The basic design of the K700 has hardly changed since its birth in 1962. However, it was available as an 8-cylinder and a 12-cylinder version. Among the current sales models from the Kirov plant in St. Petersburg is the K744 with various additional designations. The Spornitz Agricultural Cooperative still relies on these Stone Age-looking Russians, just as they do on the much more modern Magnum from Case. Roger Drefal has been here for 5 years and appreciates the old steel monsters from Kirovets.
They were bought back in 98 or 99. They say they came from somewhere, down near Leipzig. That's where they were used, right? They were bought used, the red ones, but they are both the same model year. The yellow one back there and the red one here in front are both the same model year.
What is the year of manufacture?
92, I think. Both of them were built, except for the yellow one. Those were practically the remaining stock from East German times, which they still, wanted to get rid of later, you know?
Over 450,000 Kirovets have been built at the Kirov plant so far. The latest tractors run with an output of up to 500 horsepower. The giant tractor was first exported to the German Democratic Republic in 1968. Since then, it has been a fixture of the large-scale agriculture of the workers' and farmers' state. Despite their relatively low horsepower, the Kirovets deliver high work performance compared to similar tractors, and the diesel consumption of these Russians is also far lower than that of comparable articulated tractors. The Kirovets was ahead of its time, says Roger Drefal.
The diesel consumption is, I think, also a deciding factor. Compared to other machines it uses, sure, there are machines now that use less, but back then, when these things were built, they were extremely low in diesel consumption because these engines have such a huge displacement. And that gives you a lot of power with low horsepower thanks to that large displacement. That makes a big difference too. Like with this machine here, with the Case here, the 13, it has 9 liters of displacement. And the tank engine, it has also around 300 horsepower, but has 22 liters of displacement. That is quite a big difference when you take something like that, right? That is the weight distribution. Yes, that also makes a big difference. The K700 is very front heavy. It has the engine sitting in front of the front axle, and that makes a big difference, of course.
But it is not just the Kirovets itself that does a good job in Spornitz. The Kirovets Case trio almost always works the fields together. The only exception, today, young skilled worker Michel Naik is driving the K744-1.
I don't have a dedicated machine, but I'm used wherever I'm needed. Yes, baling, everything from A to Z.
Today, Michel gets to drive the K744-1 belonging to his father, Andreas. He is currently away on his silver wedding anniversary trip and has passed his passion for Kirovets on to his son.
This one had already suffered a few piston seizures. The pistons had actually melted away. It had that much power. It is not a bad tractor because it is a Russian one. I am still a fan of Russian machines. That is why I am quite satisfied with the tractor too. I also just think the design is great. Oh, and the power.
Case driver Roger Dreffel also used to drive the Kirovets tractors in Spornitz, but he is glad to have his Magnum now.
Great, but I don't necessarily need to drive anymore. I have to be honest. I mean, the red one, that's all still fine. It has air conditioning. It's relatively quiet. That's all still fine. But the yellow one, I don't know, right? It has no air conditioning, nothing. Very loud in there. So that's really a bit different.
Special tires, a top speed of 31 kilometers per hour and 335 horsepower. This K744, without any additional designation, is used in Spornitz almost exclusively for corn silage. The K744 with the wide tires always works together with a K700A. Since 1975, Jürgen Kroll has been driving his yellow Kirovets from the Red Giant Empire.
You have to be really into it with this thing otherwise, and have the desire, otherwise nothing happens. Yeah, it's all manual labor in here, right? Hold on to the steering wheel. The steering, that's the hardest part, you know. The pump doesn't put out that much, right? And a new one should be put in, let's just say, right? That is then...
But is that generally a problem of...
Yes, it is. You have to steer a lot. But no, the first ones, they were even worse. They only had 60 liters. That is what the pump provided. You had to use both hands and full throttle to make the turn. Otherwise, it wouldn't come around. I had that with the mechanic too. He drove straight into the house wall. I say, now step on it. And then what happens? It happens in a flash.
13 tons of dead weight ensure optimal compaction, but 13 tons also need to be moved first, and that with relatively low power compared to other articulated tractors.
It pulls quite a bit, right? Even though it has 220, it actually has even more, right?
220 horsepower in yellow and 335 horsepower in red. Neither of these Russian tractors needs to fear the corn silage.
A pile like that doesn't bother it either. We can just drive right over it and then... Those are just the small silos. It's even more fun in the big ones. They have a bit more height.
For the K744 in Spornitz, not only were special Terra tires fitted, but the blade was also widened by the mechanics, so the Red Giant can use its full power. That is not the only change they have made to their Kirovets here. For example, the gear levers were also extended.
We have had them higher too, but then the lever cannot take it, then it breaks off at the bottom. That can happen with some too, you know.
And there, you extended it extra now?
Yes, they just have one of those on there, right? And right here at the control valve, it was so stiff here, this long one. So we cut the lever open and put it on, and then you just have to raise it, and then it works. Then it works better, right? Those are the tricks. And we modified the air filter, you know. There is usually a different one on there. This is the best thing there is now. If we had done that back then, we wouldn't have had to ruin so many engines. That is, it regulates that. Even in the silo, all the dust that gets in there. Now it is dry, but with the grass silo, all the dust and such, well, then it is. We really did a good job when we did that.
And so the air filter now withstands the dusty fields in Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania. How much longer these Kirovets will be in operation here in the far north of Germany is unclear. The Giants have to be repaired too often. That is why the agricultural cooperative is also switching to Case in the future. So these Kirovets will likely be the last ones that are still in real use.
I think as long as they hold up now, they'll hold up. And I think if any major repairs come up, then I think they will be scrapped too. Because we have already scrapped 3, now 4 of them in the last 5 years, just bit by bit, you know. So the fleet we once had is getting smaller, and in their place we get something like this in terms of power and everything.
And even today, the 8-cylinder diesel engine is a bit smeared with oil again, but that is normal, and tomorrow the K700A will perform its duty once more, even as the fleet around it is slowly becoming more modern.
That was the size they had back then. And normally it is much too small because it is like this. He is drilling with a 9-meter drill behind and he is working with 6 meters in front. That does not fit. It really does not fit at all.
Hard to believe that the small class crawler with nearly 270 horsepower is, in a broad sense, related to this Challenger. This yellow 600 horsepower monster has just arrived in northern Germany from Boston, America. The rubber track chassis has not yet driven a single meter over farmland. Today, it is set to head out for its maiden voyage. This class crawler had its maiden voyage almost 10 years ago. Like its sister from Spornitz, the 95E is also a product of the German-American collaboration between Claas and Caterpillar. The goal in 1999 was the mutual marketing of agricultural machinery. Cat Challenger tractors and crawler tractors were to be sold in Europe as Claas machines, and in return, Claas Lexion combine harvesters were to be sold in North America under the Cat name. The 3-year collaboration ended in 2002 with the sale of the Challenger brand name to the AGCO Group. The Claas crawler in Großgodschau is now 10 years old. Highly modern back then, it now runs for just under 500 working hours a year. Its 415 horsepower are by no means fully utilized. Today, Georg Vogel has to show what his 600 horsepower Challenger can do. Usually no problem, but with a crawler that has barely been used, you can sometimes run into unpleasant surprises. The tension is high. And then it is time for the maiden voyage with the Amazon Centaur in tow. The first few meters in the field. The Challenger is pulling the 7-meter-long Amazon Centaur at a working depth of 37 centimeters. The horsepower giant from Boston is still moving at only 8 kilometers per hour. Clearly too slow, but the 600 horsepower crawler tractor is not yet running at full capacity. The MT865C is, by the way, one of the most modern models from Challenger.
Yes, the C-Series now has a new terminal. It basically has the same features as the old one. It has been refined a bit with a few more sub-items. The menu navigation is slightly different, and it also includes different power management or engine management for the machine.
The MT865C is the second most powerful crawler tractor from Challenger. The large 875 crawler, however, has just 9 more horsepower. Both have a Caterpillar engine with 18 liters of displacement, as well as cooled exhaust gas recirculation and, like all crawlers in this series, 16 forward and 4 reverse gears.
It is now set so that it always starts in 7th gear. If that is too slow or too fast, you can change it in the terminal to start in a different gear.
The construction machinery manufacturer Caterpillar withdrew from agricultural machinery production in 2002. Nevertheless, the core components, such as the engine and transmission of the Challenger, still come from Caterpillar.
We do not need a clutch, just push forward and we drive off. Exactly. Regarding the throttle, we have no throttle here. It is only negative throttle, meaning when I step on it, the engine speed goes down. Yes, keep your foot on the gas now.
Then we have here 3 and 2.
2 to float position. Float position on the front here, push it all the way down and take your foot off the throttle.
The Challenger has a relatively low consumption of just under 15 litres per hectare, especially when operated at low engine speeds. And that is possible because the 600 horsepower crawler rarely reaches its performance limit during operation. Of course, the AGCO flagship also features GPS navigation.
To engage the steering system, simply press button 3 here. Exactly, just press it once. Exactly. As soon as you touch the steering wheel again,
Goes out.
it disengages. Exactly. Then, as I said, just shift up. It can be pushed a little bit. It should ideally not go over, let's say, 15 or 1600.
But I think we have to now.
Normally, nothing stops the MT865C, but during a demonstration, everything is just a little bit different. The Challenger is ballasted on the front rollers. This ensures good weight distribution and therefore better traction. The Amazon Centaur seems like a toy for the crawler tractor.
Yes, in terms of pulling power, it does get the horsepower to the ground, and it also provides the pulling power for the 7-meter Centaur. So I think that is not a big problem for it.
A good cooling system and long maintenance intervals make the Challenger a year-round workhorse. And that is also ensured, of course, by the powerful 600 horsepower engine.
That depends a lot on the working width and the working depth, because the wider the working width gets and the deeper I want to go, the more horsepower I need in front of it. I would say for a combination like this, depending on the working depth, between 60 and 100 horsepower per meter of working width. So I definitely need that.
And has the horsepower monster passed its maiden voyage?
Yes, you can see here that the tire track, meaning the reconsolidation, is ultimately what remains at the end. And the soil here is well mixed, leveled, and then properly reconsolidated so that I can subsequently drive over it with a power harrow combination and sow the seeds into the ground.
But besides the actual work, the soil cultivation technology like GPS and pneumatics is also becoming an important selling point, says Challenger instructor Georg Vogel.
Here you can select the different cylinders. We have 5 hydraulics now. Let's try it out. It should press for 5 seconds. We can check that right here. Once past the pressure point, it will press for 5 seconds.
And the technology works too. The maiden voyage of the Yellow Challenger was a success.
Yes, we were initially at 37 centimeters before we adjusted the cultivator. Yes, it really struggled quite a bit then. We were driving at 8 kilometers per hour, and now we are at about 30 centimeters, and it is still easy to drive at 11 kilometers per hour.
The Challenger's wide rubber tracks are designed to prevent excessive soil compaction because dense soil means poor yields, and that is why one of the biggest tractor competitors also drills with triple tires. That takes the pressure off the ground. But the John Deere 8430, with its 330 horsepower, is by far not the biggest that the American agricultural machinery manufacturer sends into the battle of the tractor giants. Until recently, 2 John Deere 8430 series crawler tractors were working in the fields of Farnwalde in Brandenburg, but the Brandenburg farmers have since decided against the 300 horsepower rubber track tractors. Now, the agricultural contracting firm MVB Farnwalde is relying entirely on the John Deere 9520 articulated tractor, putting a true giant to work on massive fields.
Yes, that is the largest tractor we have. We only have one of that kind, and it is not even fully utilized on our farm. We decided on the articulated tractor back then because, in my opinion, a crawler leaves too many tracks in the field and is not as soil-friendly as a wheeled tractor with dual tires. Most farms have problems with the width. If I have a machine 4 meters wide and I cannot drive on the road, our land is consolidated. We do not have that problem. And it is more important to me that the field looks decent, that we do not cause soil damage, and that is why we chose the articulated tractor.
Contractor Barn Hansen's articulated tractor does not run all year round and does not have a regular driver either. Today, Enrico Koch gets to operate this nearly 600 horsepower beast. Actually, the John Deere 9520 has an output of 450 horsepower, but this green giant here is tuned a bit and is therefore much more efficient than the earlier John Deere crawlers.
Yes, you can simply calculate it based on the horsepower. This one has nearly 600 horsepower. The wheeled tractor has 300 horsepower. It runs with an implement that is almost twice as wide as the one on the wheeled tractor and at a higher speed. It manages double what a standard 300 horsepower wheeled tractor does.
The articulated tractor from MVB Farnwalde worked the field in Broellen. A working width of 7.5 meters and a working depth of 15 centimeters were, of course, no problem for the John Deere. The Horsch Tiger cultivator is being prepared for transport to the next field. The hydraulics make this process look effortless and almost elegant. At nearly 40 kilometers per hour, the fully road-legal Johnny sweeps along the narrow roads, and that is when you really see the dimensions of the green giant. Moving to other fields now takes much less time, and the preparations for field work have also become easier for driver Enrico Koch with the 9520. The articulated tractor consumes 1,000 litres of fuel a day, up to 100 litres per hour. The John Deere requires a great deal of fuel for its nearly 600 horsepower. Nevertheless, Barn Hansen saves almost 30% in fuel compared to before.
That is always relative, Whether I use 100 liters of fuel an hour, that sounds like a lot, or the wheeled tractor uses 50 liters of fuel an hour. But here you have double the area output, and in that respect, it is actually a bit more than double the area output for double the fuel consumption per hour. But per hectare, it actually uses less in the end.
This perfectly straight track was drawn by the heavens. Or rather, by a satellite, because of course the 9520 also has GPS guidance. Enrico Koch just has to drive one reference line, and the automatic steering system AutoTrack, developed by John Deere, then pulls the remaining lines parallel to it. Due to the now reduced overlaps of the individual work paths, time and fuel are also saved. It is not just in theory that Enrico Koch can now work without touching the steering wheel. The prerequisite, however, is that he has programmed the onboard computer correctly.
Certainly they need to know a little bit about computer technology. And a system like that has to be programmed, it has to be set up once, and then the tractor just drives its paths as straight as no human could ever steer them.
John Deere is one of the largest agricultural machinery manufacturers in the world, but the American manufacturer's vast range includes more than just agricultural machines. Forestry and construction equipment now also bear the logo with the Deere. It all began in 1837, when the founder John Deere developed the first self-scouring plough that was also a commercial success. Deere and Company now operates plants in 11 countries and employs nearly 56,000 people. Since the late 90s, the Americans have also been using articulated steering for their green and yellow giants. In any case, Enrico Koch enjoys the current standard from John Deere. John Deere products are sold in 160 countries, and a look behind the green and yellow giant from Varenwalde shows that John Deere does not just manufacture machines, but also sells a way of life. The machinery at MVB Varenwalde is bursting with horsepower, or rather Deere power, because here they don't just rely on John Deere, they live John Deere.
A little bit more, yes. Lower again, a little bit lower.
That was 10 years ago. That is when we completely changed our fleet of machinery here. As we had a lot of old machines, different brands, and said now it all needs to be streamlined. And it became John Deere, mainly because we have very good connections with the John Deere dealer, and we are very satisfied with them. And simply because of the proximity to the dealer and the good relationship with the John Deere dealer, we started out with John Deere machines.
Preparing for the harvest, the large John Deere combine harvesters have a cutting width of 9 meters. Green as the young cereal plant and yellow as the ripe grain, the green machines define the scene in the fields here. Everything in Varenwalde is simply bathed in green and yellow, even if it does not come from the American manufacturer.
We are building a new workshop, and the workshop will be a steel structure, and a bit of green and a bit of yellow will be included there too. And we identify with that as a business. The employees have identified with it for a long time, and the public is also slowly seeing, yes, the green and yellow vehicles are arriving again. That is MVB Varenwalde.
Or simply John Deere country. Preparations for the harvest are complete, and in John Deere land, even the sky is now turning, well, a little bit yellower. Sahineken in Saxony. Here, the Case IH Quadtrac STX 485 pulls its lanes powerfully and quickly. In 1997, the first articulated tractors with the striking 4 rubber tracks were presented, and now the red powerhouses have arrived in Saxony as well. Because since the beginning of 2009, this articulated tracked tractor has been bringing its horsepower to the fields for the Heineken Agricultural Cooperative. And there is a good reason why they rely on this gigantic crawler here.
We chose the Quadtra because of its powerful performance, which defines the vehicle. Previously, we had a John Deere articulated tractor with 360 horsepower. We were at the limit in terms of performance and wanted to optimize everything a bit more. And that's why we decided on this machine so that we can simply get all the power onto the ground and also effectively achieve savings in terms of diesel consumption or fuel consumption and also more area output.
And when it comes to area performance, Case is the world champion. In 2005, a Case IH-STX 500 Quadtrac set the world record for ploughing. It managed 321.17 hectares in 24 hours. With its 4 tracks, the Quadtrac distributes its weight of nearly 24 tons evenly, providing ideal power transmission. This is why the Quadtrac is also gentle on the soil and, unlike other tracked tractors, leaves almost no traces behind.
He is now doing the seedbed preparation for sowing rapeseed. We have a working depth of 15 centimeters and a working width of 7 meters. And I think working speed estimated between 10 and 12 kilometers per hour.
Thomas Richter is underestimating his Quadtrac because driver Mike Bernsdorf is zooming across the field at nearly 15 kilometers per hour.
Yes, it is average. Must have a certain working speed so that the implements at the back work through.
And the 485 horsepower of the Quadtrac provide this working speed. And the Quadtrac in Heineken also works with GPS control, of course, as Mike Bernsdorf shows us on his onboard computer.
These are the tracks that have been worked, and these are the ones still to be worked. There are still a whole lot of them left in the middle.
Although calling a Quadtrac a small tractor might be a bit of an understatement. In the STX series, the articulated tractor series from Case, the idea of 3 Americans from North Dakota lives on. The Steiger family, the founders of the long-established agricultural machinery company Steiger. In the mid-50s, the farming family lacked the right tractor for their 2,000 hectares of land. With a $10,000 loan, they began building an articulated tractor in 1957, and it would revolutionize agriculture all over the world. In 1986, Case acquired the insolvent tractor company, and by now, the great-grandchild of the first Steiger has arrived here in Heineken, Saxony, as a modern Case articulated tractor.
I've been looking into this for a long time. We have been working on it for about 2 years, and we also visited various farms beforehand to see it for ourselves, where such a good piece of equipment is already running, and we were actually convinced from the very beginning.
The Case Quadtrac S TX 485 has almost nothing in common with the $10,000 Steiger from 1957, except for the articulated joint. Even back then, the 2 pivot joints behind the cab were the trademark of these tractors. And by acquiring the insolvent company Steiger, Case bought itself a great tractor. Thomas Richter watches his new horsepower giant drive away. Since the beginning of July 2009, this red crawler tractor has been operating here in Heineken. In Gruen-Lichtenberg, alongside the new Case Magnum 335, the Quadtrac STX 440 is also at work. The Quadtrac 440 is a bit more angular, a bit edgier, and a bit less powerful than the red horsepower giant in Heineken. Nevertheless, its six-cylinder engine delivers 440 horsepower, but the Gruen-Lichtenberg Agricultural Cooperative also wants to expand. Soon, a very large articulated tractor will be operating here. Naturally, another Quadtrac from Case. It seems as if the Saxons are fond of the Case articulated track tractors. Why?
We also took the step, or rather the step to optimize things a bit in terms of working hours and overall maintenance. The machine is fully roadworthy. The driver doesn't need a second person when moving to another field to walk. He can use the machine on practically any road at any time. And that was actually the deciding factor for why we chose this machine.
For over 5 years, Case developers worked with Goodyear experts on rubber track drives for the Quadtrac. The 4 independently suspended track units are now equally suitable for field work and driving on the road. The Case Quadtrac is a giant that people in Saxony will likely have to get used to seeing on the roads. After all, this 24-ton monster reaches a top speed of 37 kilometers per hour off the field. Hard to believe this tractor is working. The Class Xerion system vehicle is fast in the field. The 335 horsepower tractor has a turning radius of only 12 meters, even with a slurry tanker trailer. To prevent nitrogen loss, this Class Xerion saddle truck works the liquid manure directly into the soil using the Amazon Catros disc harrow.
We acquired the Xerion to spread liquid manure with low emissions. We run it at the back with the disc harrow, as you saw, or with an 18-meter trailing shoe system. The liquid manure is injected directly into the ground through the cutting distributor at the top, so it does not come into contact with the air at all, and in fact, no odor can occur.
The capacity of the tanker is crucial for cost-effective slurry application. A large volume helps save money. 26,000 liters fit into the Osters and Voss slurry tanker alone. Due to the high work rate of the Xerion saddle track, between 100 and 150 cubic meters of liquid manure must be delivered to the field every hour. And the tanker trailer literally swallows it all up. Because with a pump capacity of 9,000 liters per minute, the trailer is quickly refilled. The saddle track is ready for action again. Driver Carsten Jother achieves a daily output of about 1,000 to 1,100 cubic meters with the Xerion.
No, it is also crucial the cubic meters per hectare, right? Now at 15 cubic meters, which I'm doing at the moment, I drive almost 300 kilometers with one tank, with 26 cubic meters, I have to say. With 26 cubic meters, 3.4, I drive the kilometer with one tank. Then that is everything.
Carsten Jother spends 12 to 13 hours per shift in his tractor. Modern technology has made the work easier and also controls the precise distribution of the liquid manure. This is important for uniform plant growth. And the Osters and Voss contracting company places special importance on ensuring that the fertilization is also carried out in an environmentally friendly manner.
We use the Xerion to achieve application rates of 100 to 150 cubic meters per hour, depending on the consistency of the slurry, the field conditions, and the application volumes. Yes, they are. The Xerion certainly uses between 60 and 80 liters of diesel per hour when spreading liquid manure, depending on the application rate and soil conditions.
The Xerion owes its enormous maneuverability to its so-called intelligent four-wheel steering. If the driver steers sharply, the rear axle automatically steers along with it. However, the automatic system can also be switched off. Then the rear axle is simply controlled by joystick. The 335 six-cylinder engine from Caterpillar develops nearly maximum pulling power even at low engine speeds. The Xerion saddle track is simply a powerhouse that does not need to shy away from comparisons with stronger tractors. The four wide tires transfer the power well to the ground and distribute the up to 30 tons of total weight evenly across the field. Like all Xerion models from Claas, the saddle track can also drive offset in crab steering mode. The axle shift distributes the weight even better across the ground. This soil-friendly method is particularly advantageous on damp fields. However, Osters and Voss only use the crab steering mode upon customer request. However, for some jobs, crab steering makes little sense, as Rolf Koch explains to us in his Xerion during corn silage.
Well, that is not very nice. You can fall off that very quickly. But if you want to finish the silo quickly, at the end of the day, you can just lay it down. And then you only need 3 passes and you're done. Because of this work, because of this tire width here, 900 tires on it.
Under the hood of the Xerion is a powerful 8.8-litre six-cylinder engine from Caterpillar with charge air cooling. That naturally means reliability and high performance in the field. The engine output of 335 horsepower is transmitted directly to the gearbox via a short shaft. This ensures very efficient power transmission. That is why the Xerion is also suitable for the heaviest work. In addition, it has permanent all-wheel drive. The ZF Ecom 3.5 continuously variable transmission is among the best currently on the market. The shifting works without any power interruption in both directions. The transmission and the engine do almost everything on their own. Xerion driver Rolf Koch no longer has to shift gears.
You can tell now. When it shifts through the gears, you can hear it, it works. Does it find the most efficient gear on its own for optimal fuel consumption?
For smaller silos, however, the Osters and Voss contracting company does not need a Xerion. Here they work almost exclusively with large Fendt tractors from the 900 Vario series, and they have at least up to 360 horsepower. Dual tires, over 300 horsepower. These two Fendt on the silo get no break because now, in the middle of harvest time, 3 haulers tirelessly bring in new work. And once again, Thomas Martin arrives in his 927 and brings even more chopped corn that needs to be compacted. Thomas Martin has been with Osters and Voss for 15 years, has driven quite a few tractors, even a John Deere, but he would not want to be without his Fendt now.
It's getting a bit bumpy now with the John Deere. I think it might not be quite a smooth a ride anymore, maybe. With the new ones, perhaps it would be, but now it is better to work with. Comfort is better. Fendt is just Fendt, you know.
The reason for the hectic drive from the silo to the field is this forage harvester, one of the most powerful from class. With a working width of 9 meters and 830 horsepower, the Claas Jaguar 980 literally eats its way through the cornfield.
This large forage harvester needs at least 3 transport vehicles, ideally self-propelled, and generally 2 drivers on the silo. The harvester has such a high output that one tractor just could not keep up. That's not feasible. As the buyer.
At Osters and Voss in Großgottschaft, they rely on Fendt for their large tractors. The 900s from the Vario series have proven themselves here. 75 tractors from 200 to 360 horsepower, almost all from Fendt. Andreas Osters does some simple math.
Yes, we chose Fendt because they offer high operational reliability, are characterized by low fuel consumption, and are powerful. The 900 series from Fendt is certainly the top class. We mainly use Fendt of the 900 series because these tractors are the most versatile for us to use, and we can achieve the best utilization rates that way.
Comfort as well as all-around visibility in the spacious glass cab and the slightly higher engine output. The Xerion from Claas seems to be perhaps a bit more than just the top class after all. The Xerion is available in 2 horsepower versions. The 3800 has an output of 379 horsepower, and the slightly weaker 3300 still manages 335 horsepower. In addition, the Xerion also brings the necessary weight for compacting, especially for corn silage.
The weight and the power. The others just don't have the power to pull this mass up at once. And the weight to get stuck, they have to drive over it a few times, where I only need to drive over it once or twice. You can also see that in these deep tracks here. That is how much it presses in.
And so, at the Osters and Voss contracting company, true tractor giants from Fendt and Claas work hand in hand. Time to call it a day for the Xerion. On the road, the giant from Claas reaches 50 kilometers per hour, and thanks to the transmission, it does so at a reduced engine speed of 1,700 revolutions per minute. This naturally saves fuel. For Andreas Osters, however, the day is far from over. His machines have earthly needs.
Or how much is left in your tank?
His Krone forage harvester is thirsty. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, Andreas Osters reaches the cornfield near Schwerin. And here in Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania, the boss still refuels his machines himself. In just 5 to 6 minutes, his Krone forage harvester is refilled, and then contractor Andreas Osters can finally head home for a well-deserved rest. A steady wind blows across the flat land. The sun makes the endless expanses look even larger. Here, way up in the north of Denmark, on the Danish Baltic coast, lies Dock.